What would you do if you woke up one morning to find your entire garden destroyed, stalks snapped, petals crushed, and every single flower ripped from the soil? Not just any flowers, but the ones you had spent years cultivating, perfecting, pouring your time, effort, and passion into? That was the sight that greeted me that morning, and the rage that followed was like nothing I had ever felt before. My sunflower field had been my pride and joy, a golden sea of towering giants swaying under the crisp morning breeze. Now, it looked like the aftermath of a hurricane. Stalks lay broken, the soil was a mess of torn roots, and the once vibrant blooms were completely gone. It was a massacre. And then, as if to add insult to injury, I saw it, a piece of paper, stuck to a snapped stalk with a wad of pink chewing gum. I snatched it up, my hands already shaking. It was a handwritten note, scrawled in aggressively cursive handwriting. Borrowed for the HOA gala. Thanks for your contribution. Karen. Borrowed. Borrowed? As if my sunflowers were library books instead of living things I had nurtured for years. As if she had the right to waltz onto my property, uproot my work, and call it a donation. My heart pounded, disbelief giving way to fury so raw I could taste it. And then, as I stood there gripping the note in one hand and my now cold coffee in the other, my phone buzzed. An email. The subject line nearly made me crush the phone in my fist. Revised HOA Policy, Community Gardening Guidelines. I opened it and felt my stomach drop. Effective immediately, the HOA was implementing a new initiative stating that larger private gardens within the neighborhood were considered community assets if they exceeded a certain size. I scanned the email again, my brain refusing to process the audacity of what I was reading. They had put this policy into place just last night. After my garden had already been raided. After my sunflowers had already been stolen. It wasn't just a violation. It was premeditated. My hands trembled as I locked my phone and stormed toward my house, my mind a whirlwind of fury. This wasn't just Karen being her usual, self-important, suburban dictator self, this was calculated theft, wrapped in a thin, pathetic attempt at legality. She had changed the rules overnight, after the crime was already committed, just so she could act as if she had done nothing wrong. And the worst part? She thought she could get away with it. Not a chance. I didn't bother to cool down. There was no point. Karen wasn't the type you approached with logic or reason. She was the type who only backed down when she was cornered, and I had every intention of doing just that. I grabbed my car keys and drove straight to the HOA office, barely remembering the drive, my thoughts consumed with the sheer audacity of it all. When I pushed open the office door, the first thing I saw was Karen Whitmore, HOA president, sipping a venti pumpkin spice latte like she didn't have a care in the world. She sat behind the front desk, one leg crossed over the other, her perfectly manicured nails clicking lazily against her laptop keyboard. The picture of casual indifference. She didn't even look up when I walked in. "Oh, Ethan," she said, finally glancing up, flashing me the same fake, syrupy smile she always used when she thought she was in control. "I was just about to call you. The sunflowers look stunning at the gala. They really liven up the space." My grip on my phone tightened. I had prepared myself for denial, maybe even a half-hearted apology, but not this smug, condescending attempt to rewrite reality as if I should be thanking her for stealing from me. "Karen," I said, voice tight with barely contained fury, "I didn't donate my sunflowers. You and your little gang of plant thieves trespassed onto my property and stole them." She waved a hand, as if I were an annoying child throwing a tantrum. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Ethan. It was just a few flowers." I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "A few flowers? You wiped out my entire garden, Karen. Years of cultivation. You stripped it bare and left nothing but a crime scene." She sighed heavily, as if she were the one being inconvenienced. "We assumed you'd be happy to contribute to the community event. Besides, it's not like you were selling them. They were just sitting there in your yard. I could feel my eye twitch. Karen, do you hear yourself when you talk? That's like saying you can take someone's car because it was parked in their driveway and not being used at that exact moment. She let out a dismissive chuckle, taking another slow sip of her overpriced latte. Oh, Ethan, you always were a little overly attached to those sunflowers. Then, as if offering a grand olive branch, she shrugged. Fine. If you're really that upset, I can get you a free drink at the gala or something. That was it. I pulled out my phone and pressed play on the security footage. Karen's smirk didn't disappear immediately, it took a few seconds. Long enough for her to see herself, Susan, Debbie, and Lisa sneaking onto my property in the dead of night, armed with garden shears, long enough to watch them yank sunflowers from the earth, stuff them into trash bags, and load them into her SUV, long enough to witness Lisa taking a selfie, holding one of my prized hybrids like a trophy. Karen's expression morphed into something colder, not guilt, because people like Karen don't feel guilt. No, it was calculating. She was already assessing the damage, figuring out how to spin it in her favor. I didn't give her the chance. This isn't just theft, I said, voice steady. This is trespassing, property destruction, and grand larceny, and since you think my sunflowers were just flowers, let me educate you. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. Those were specialty hybrid sunflowers, insured for high-value botanical research. Guess how much they were worth? Karen blinked. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. I took my time, savoring the moment. $500,000. Karen choked on her latte. That's absurd, she coughed, wiping at her mouth. There's no way flowers cost that much. I smiled, slow and sharp. Tell that to the insurance company. Or better yet, the legal team reviewing this. I scrolled through my phone casually. Oh, and the viral video I'm about to post. Karen's mask cracked completely. Ethan, let's not escalate this into something bigger than it needs to be. I let out a laugh. Oh, but it's already big, Karen. Because here's the thing, this isn't just a neighborhood squabble. You didn't just steal from me. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice to something cold and lethal. ***, you profited. ***. She froze. I did a little digging, I continued. You didn't just use the sunflowers for decoration. You sold them, you held an auction at the gala. Called them exclusive floral arrangements. You made thousands off of stolen property. Karen opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, she looked genuinely afraid. I straightened, slipping my phone back into my pocket. An invoice is coming your way, Karen. A very large invoice. She scoffed, trying to recover. You seriously think I'm going to pay you for a few flowers? I smiled. Not just a few flowers. An entire season's worth of work. Months of cultivation. You have no idea how much those hybrids were actually worth. ***. Her face paled. How much? I pretended to consider. With damages? Legal fees? Emotional distress? I let the silence stretch before finally meeting her gaze. $500,000. Karen looked like she had been physically struck, her mouth opened and closed, eyes darting around as if trying to find an escape route. I turned and walked toward the door, pausing just before stepping out. Oh, and Karen? I glanced back. Next time you want flowers for an event, maybe try a florist. They usually prefer customers who pay instead of loot. As I walked out, I could already hear the frantic tapping of Karen's keyboard. She could email, complain, and spin the story all she wanted. It didn't matter. She had stolen from the wrong person. And now? She was going to pay. The fallout came faster than I expected. Less than 24 hours after I sent Karen the invoice, my phone buzzed with a notification. A new HOA violation notice. I clicked on it, already knowing it would be something absurd, but the sheer pettiness of it still made my blood boil. Property violation, unkempt yard. Fine, $5,000, increasing by $500 per day until corrected. I read it twice, just to make sure my eyes weren't deceiving me. My yard, the one that Karen and her Lululemon-clad minions had utterly destroyed, was now being fined for looking like a mess, the audacity was almost comical. Almost. Before I could even process my next move, my inbox dinged again. This time, the subject line made my stomach turn. A message from your HOA president, setting the record straight. I clicked on it, already bracing for what kind of manipulative nonsense Karen had cooked up, and sure enough, there it was. Dear neighbors, I want to address some unfortunate misunderstandings that have been circulating regarding the HOA's recent community beautification efforts. As many of you know, the annual HOA Gala is a cherished tradition, and in an effort to enhance the event's atmosphere, we utilized available floral arrangements from the community. These efforts were made with the assumption that all residents would be thrilled to contribute to such an important occasion. Unfortunately, one homeowner has chosen to misinterpret this gesture and is now pursuing an outrageous and financially damaging lawsuit against the HOA, one that, if successful, could have serious consequences for all of us as homeowners. I encourage you all to consider the broader implications of these actions. We must stand together as a community and not allow personal vendettas to disrupt the harmony we have built. Sincerely, Karen Whitmore, HOA President. The sheer gall of this woman. Not only had she stolen my property, profited from it, and gotten caught red-handed, but now she was spinning herself as the victim and trying to turn the entire neighborhood against me. And, of course, it worked. My phone blew up with messages from neighbors, some angry, some confused. Wait, you're suing the HOA? That's coming out of our fees, dude. Why didn't you just talk to Karen instead of taking this public? Man, it's just some flowers. Are you really trying to bankrupt the neighborhood over this? Karen had framed it perfectly, turning the narrative from, she stole from me, to, I'm trying to ruin the HOA for personal gain. It might have worked. If not for one little mistake. Someone, likely one of Karen's former allies who saw the writing on the wall, ***, leaked the security footage to the neighborhood Facebook group ***. The backlash was instantaneous. Wait, she just helped herself to someone's yard and called it a donation? That's literally theft. She stole, made money off it, then tried to fine him for the damage? This is next-level villain behavior. Did anyone else notice Lisa taking a selfie while committing a literal crime? Classy. The tide shifted so fast that Karen didn't even have time to control the damage. Within hours, the footage had spread beyond the neighborhood, people outside the community started sharing it, mocking the absurdity of the situation. And then, the final blow came. A local news station picked up the story. It was almost too perfect. The segment featured before and after shots of my once thriving sunflower field, side by side with the security footage of Karen and her crew looting it in the dead of night. The real gem? They got a statement from one of the HOA board members. The board does not condone the actions of our HOA president, and we are currently reviewing the matter. Translation: Karen was on her own. The next morning, I stepped outside to grab my mail, and across the street, I saw her, ***, pacing in her driveway, furiously *typing on her phone, ***. And right behind her? A moving truck. Rumors spread fast. Karen had been pressured to resign from the HOA after a flood of angry homeowners demanded an emergency meeting. The lawsuit was more than she could handle, and her reputation was in tatters. Then, the real cherry on top, ***, an official email from the HOA board, ***. Dear Maplewood residents. We would like to formally announce that Karen Whitmore has stepped down as HOA president, effective immediately. Additionally, due to recent financial adjustments, the annual HOA fees will be reduced for the first time in over a decade. It was over. Karen was gone. But the best part? Later that afternoon, I got an email from her lawyer. Karen was offering a settlement. A hefty amount, not the full $500,000 I had originally demanded, but still more than enough to cover damages, rebuild my garden, and fund a few long overdue projects. I didn't even hesitate. I accepted. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't just about the money. It was about winning. And Karen Whitmore, the self-appointed queen of Maplewood, had finally been dethroned. The dust hadn't even settled from Karen's resignation when the full scope of her downfall began unfolding. The neighborhood was still buzzing, and the HOA board was scrambling to reassure homeowners that they weren't complicit in her stunt. But as much as they tried to distance themselves, the reality was clear. Karen had ruled this HOA like a petty dictator for years, and now that she had fallen, people were finally seeing just how deep the corruption ran. And they were pissed. The Facebook group, which had once been Karen's personal echo chamber, had turned into an open forum for exposing her past misdeeds. Homeowners who had been too afraid to speak up before were suddenly coming forward with horror stories. One man, a retired veteran, revealed how Karen had slapped him with fines for unauthorized modifications when he installed a wheelchair ramp for his disabled wife, forcing him to go through months of appeals just to keep it. Another neighbor posted screenshots of emails proving Karen had funneled HOA funds into personal, home improvement projects, which, in reality, meant renovating her kitchen and installing a brand new patio. But the most damning revelation? Karen had been planning to run for a seat on the county housing committee. She hadn't just been ruling the neighborhood, she had been using Maplewood as a stepping stone for bigger ambitions, hoping to leverage her HOA presidency into real political influence. And in a final, desperate attempt to salvage her reputation, she reached for one last power move. That's when I got the letter. A formal HOA complaint, this time, not about my garden. It accused me of disruptive conduct and creating a hostile neighborhood environment. According to the complaint, my lawsuit, my online smearing campaign, and my refusal to settle the situation privately had led to community unrest, which, under HOA bylaws, was grounds for potential fines or even forced mediation. In short, Karen was trying to get me punished for exposing her. It was desperate. It was laughable. And it backfired spectacularly. By the time the letter landed in my mailbox, the HOA board had already called an emergency meeting. The legal fees alone from Karen's fiasco had pushed the association into financial crisis, and the last thing they needed was more lawsuits. They weren't just done with Karen, they were ready to make an example out of her. A vote was scheduled. The question? Whether Karen should be permanently banned from holding any HOA leadership position, ever again. And when the results came in, 100% of the community voted yes. Not a single person defended her. Not even Susan, Debbie, or Lisa, her former cronies, who had conveniently gone silent the moment things started crumbling. It was the ultimate humiliation. Karen had spent years tightening her grip on the community, fining people into submission, making life miserable for anyone who crossed her. And in the end, she had no one left. 2 days later, the moving truck was gone. Karen had officially left Maplewood. But she couldn't even leave quietly. The day after she vanished, the HOA board sent out a final announcement. Due to recent administrative changes, we are happy to announce that annual HOA fees will be reduced by 15%, effective immediately. For the first time in years, homeowners were getting a financial break. That was Karen's real legacy. Not the improvements she had promised, not the ridiculous community events she had forced down everyone's throats. She had spent years micromanaging, extorting, and punishing. And in the end, Her departure was the best thing that had ever happened to the neighborhood. And me? I wasn't just done with Karen. I had erased her influence completely. With Karen gone, Maplewood felt different, lighter, freer. It was as if the neighborhood had been holding its breath for years and finally let out a collective exhale. No more surprise fines. No more absurd rules meant only to benefit those in power. No more Karen. I used part of the settlement money to rebuild my garden, but this time, I didn't just replace what was lost. I made it better. I brought in professionals to help redesign the layout, installed better irrigation, and worked with a local botanist to cultivate a new hybrid strain, taller, stronger, and more resilient than before. When it finally bloomed months later, I named it Karen's Regret. The irony was delicious. The garden became more than just my passion project. It became a community landmark. People started stopping by just to admire the sunflowers, asking questions, sharing gardening tips. Kids who had never taken an interest in plants before were suddenly eager to learn. The same neighbors who had once been too afraid to challenge Karen's authority were now actively engaging in HOA meetings, questioning policies, and demanding real leadership. That's when the board introduced a new rule, inspired by my fight. The Ethan Rule, a regulation preventing any HOA from claiming private gardens as community assets without owner consent. It passed unanimously. One afternoon, while I was tending to the new sprouts, a car pulled up to the curb. My stomach twisted when I saw who it was. Karen. She stepped out, looking nothing like the woman I had battled for months. No polished demeanor, no clipboard, no smug superiority. She hesitated at the fence, staring at the sunflowers, before finally speaking. "They're beautiful," she admitted. "Better than before." I wiped my hands on my jeans, studying her carefully. "Waiting." She sighed, glancing away. "Look. I know I messed up. I let things get out of control. I thought I was doing what was best for the neighborhood, but I see now that I wasn't. I hurt people. And I hurt you." For a long moment, I didn't say anything. I searched for the usual Karen tactics: manipulation, deflection, control. But for once, I saw none of it. Finally, I nodded. "Yeah. You did." She swallowed hard, then nodded back. I wanted to apologize. It didn't change anything. It didn't erase what she had done. But maybe, just maybe, she finally understood the consequences of her actions. I watched her walk back to her car and drive away, knowing this was the last time I'd ever see her. The wind rustled through the sunflowers, their golden heads swaying in the breeze, as if nodding in approval. The neighborhood was free. My garden had flourished. And I had won, not just in court, but in every way that mattered. But that's the thing about people like Karen. They're everywhere. So now I have to ask, have you ever felt powerless against HOA, or Karen, rules? Share your experiences below, let's see who had it worse.